Fire was not invented. No ancient human sat down and decided to create it. Nobody drew a diagram, ran an experiment, or tried to solve the problem of darkness and cold. Fire appeared. And the first human who touched it on purpose was almost certainly terrified. What's strange is not that it took so long. What's strange is that every other animal on Earth watched fire for millions of years, and none of them ever figured out what to do with it. Only one species crossed that line. And that leads to a very strange question. What was different about us? Go back roughly 1.5 million years. The species walking across the African savanna is not quite us. It is Homo erectus, upright, social, intelligent enough to make tools, but with a brain about 2/3 the size of yours. They live in bands of maybe 20 to 40 individuals. There are no structures. No stored food. No light after sunset. The night is a problem. It is cold. It is loud with predators. The group sleeps close together in trees or in rocky outcroppings. They are not at the top of the food chain. Not yet. And then, somewhere on the open grassland, lightning strikes dry grass. Or a volcano exhales. Or two flint rocks crack together in a rockslide. Fire exists. It has always existed. It crawls across the ground, it eats the brush, and every animal in range runs from it. Except one group didn't run quite far enough. Here is what science thinks actually happened, and it is not a single moment. It is a process that took tens of thousands of years and probably happened in stages. The first stage is called fire opportunism. Animals across the African savanna have been studied eating insects, seeds, and small prey that are killed or flushed out by naturally occurring wildfires. Chimpanzees have been observed doing this. Hawks in Australia have been documented picking up burning sticks and dropping them to start new fires, flushing prey. Fire was already a tool of the environment. Homo erectus was smart enough to follow it. But here's the important part. Following fire is not the same as controlling it. The archaeological record shows something specific, the earliest evidence of controlled fire use, not just proximity to fire, but management of it, appears at a site called Wonderwerk Cave in South Africa, dated to approximately 1 million years ago. Researchers found burned bone and plant ash deep inside the cave, far from any entrance where a wildfire could have naturally burned. Someone carried fire in. Someone kept it alive. In 2012, a team led by archaeologist Berna published analysis of those deposits in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences. The evidence was not ambiguous. The burning patterns matched controlled, repeated use, not a single lightning strike event. But why did the behavior stick? Why did Homo erectus not just encounter fire and move on, the way other animals do? The answer is almost certainly the calories. Cooking food, even in its most primitive form, just exposing meat to heat, dramatically increases the energy extracted from it. A raw sweet potato delivers roughly 69 calories per 100 grams. Cooked, the same potato delivers roughly 90. Meat, cooked, denatures proteins in a way that makes them far easier for the gut to absorb. The body that was spending enormous energy on digestion suddenly had surplus. And surplus energy, over generations, went to the brain. And this is where things get strange. The human gut began to shrink. Human jaws became smaller, because they no longer needed the raw mechanical force to process uncooked food. And the brain grew. Homo erectus had a cranial capacity of roughly 900 cubic centimeters. Homo sapiens, tens of thousands of years later, reached 1,400. Fire may not be the only cause, but it is one of the most compelling candidates for what fed that expansion. The evidence trail for fire is scattered across continents, which itself tells a story. It was not one discovery in one place. It was rediscovered, reinvented, and spread independently, suggesting the cognitive and behavioral conditions for it were already present across multiple populations of early humans. At Gesher Benot Ya'aqov in Israel, researchers found evidence of fire use dating to roughly 790,000 years ago, burned wood, seeds, and flint tools all at the same site. At Zhoukoudian in China, the cave site of Homo erectus pekinensis, ash deposits and burned animal bones suggest fire use somewhere between 400,000 and 600,000 years ago. In Berna Cave in Israel, the remains of structured hearths appear around 60,000 years ago, by which point fire management had become sophisticated enough to show regular placement, reuse, and ash disposal. The Hadza people of Tanzania, one of the last hunter-gatherer populations studied extensively by anthropologists, still use fire-starting techniques that have been documented for generations. They use hand drills and specific wood pairings, a softer spindle rotated against a harder hearthboard. The friction creates an ember in roughly 30 to 60 seconds in practiced hands. It is not a primitive skill. It is an extraordinarily refined one, the product of accumulated knowledge passed between generations for perhaps hundreds of thousands of years. Fire was never just a discovery. It became a technology. And like all technologies, it had to be maintained, taught, and protected. The downstream consequences of fire are almost too large to fully catalog. Your sleep schedule exists, in part, because of fire. Before artificial light, humans in firelit camps showed what researchers now call bimodal sleep, a first sleep shortly after dark, a period of quiet wakefulness, then a second sleep. The campfire created a social buffer against full darkness. Humans stayed awake around it. They talked. And that talking, that sustained, safe, face-to-face communication in the dark, is thought to be one of the conditions that accelerated the development of language itself. Anthropologist Polly Wiessner conducted research among the Jew/Hoansi San people of the Kalahari and published findings in 2014 in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences. She found that daytime conversations centered on practical matters, food, tools, complaints. But firelit nighttime conversations were almost entirely devoted to storytelling, memory, and social bonding. Fire did not just cook food. It created the conditions for human narrative. Think about that for a second. Your instinct to gather with people at night, to sit around something warm and lit, to feel safer in a group after dark, that is not a preference. It is not a personality trait. That is ancient software, still running in the background of your nervous system, unchanged for 1,000,000 years. The campfire is why you have friends. It may be why you have stories. It is almost certainly why you have the kind of brain that can understand what you are watching right now. No one chose to make fire matter. A group of hominins, scared and cold and probably already retreating from a natural blaze, did not sit down and decide to change the course of life on Earth. They picked up a branch. They kept something alive through the night. And that small, frightened act of maintenance set off a chain of consequences that produced language, cognition, culture, and eventually the species capable of asking why any of it happened. And tonight, when you turn on a light and feel just slightly less alone in the dark, that feeling has a name. It is 1,000,000 years old. And fire is where it started.